Navigating the Digital Jungle with Sue Atkins and Friends.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a very special bonus episode of Navigating the Digital Jungle with Sue Atkins and Friends. I'm Sue Atkins, and today we're taking a delightful stroll down memory lane as we revisit some of our favourite episodes. We share our top tips and our takeaways and highlight our wonderful guests from Season 1. Plus, stick around because we have an exciting giveaway of Dr Beth Mosley's book, Happy Families, How to Protect and Support Your Child's Mental Health. It really is a must-have book that you won't want to miss. So, joining me today are my fabulous resident guests, Angeline Corvaglia, creator of Data Girl and Friends, videos to empower young minds with online safety and AI literacy, and Tara Jones, an EdTech consultant. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Sue. It's great to be here for another special episode.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here and to relive some of those best moments from Season 1. And also, it's great to celebrate our growing community of listeners.
It really is. So, let's dive right in. One of our standout episodes has to be the one where we discussed screen time management with Dr Beth Mosley.
I always say to families, think about the two hands of parenting. One hand is that warmth and care, and the other hand is boundaries. It's absolutely an essential part of the parenting role. And it can sometimes, for some parents, it depends on your parenting style and what comes naturally to you. But for some parents, that boundary element can be really hard. And for other parents, the warmth bit can be really hard. And I think the challenge with the phone is because it's so addictive. I keep saying the phone is because but digital devices.
Yeah. Because
it's so addictive, your child has a biological response to you taking that phone away or restricting that phone. So in the heat of the moment, when you're saying to your child, get off your device, or you actually come and turn it off, as I have done before when I've given enough warnings to come down for dinner, the reaction that you get is sometimes absolutely staggering. And
yes, explosive, isn't it?
Explosive, yeah, real withdrawal of fury. I mean, real physiological response. And that's the withdrawal of dopamine in a child's system. So I talk about this, the dopamine crash in my book, and understanding that so that parents can talk to their children about it. So I've told all of my children about this. My son talks about it all the time. I'm in the dopamine crash. And what it is whilst you're taken away from something that like your gadget, which is giving you so much dopamine, you go into dopamine deficit, which feels because you need to go through that in order for your body to start producing and your brain to start producing its own dopamine. So you have that period, high intensity risk period of time from coming off a device, transitioning to another activity where your child is going to be particularly explosive or difficult because they're going through a withdrawal. And until they've gone through that withdrawal, their body's not going to produce its own dopamine. And we can sometimes get in habits of moving kids from one dopamine activity to the next to help with that, or have a chocolate bar, or do this, and to kind of keep those levels up. So, and it's nothing worse for you as a parent. You want to take your kids out for a nice day at the beach or whatever it is, and they won't come off their devices. They're moping around for about an hour. It's misery. And you're thinking, why have I gone to all this effort when all they actually want to do is be back on their screens? And they're going through that dopamine withdrawal. And my advice to any parent is, if you're aware of that kind of time frame after coming off a device, don't do anything or say anything that's going to be super triggering, because I worked out with my youngest that that's when we were having these big disruptive fights, or when things got broken, because he would react like that. Then I would be, what are you doing? How dare you do that? And then he would be, because he was in that state, then he would really react. He would actually get really physical, start punching his bed. So exactly. So I have learned now that there is going to be a cost section of time where your child is going to be exceptionally difficult to communicate with and may do and say things they don't actually mean.
Beth,
Well, it really varies between children.
Yeah.
It varies between children. And I think for neurodiverse children, it can be a longer period of time because we know typically for neurodiverse children, they do struggle more with transitions between activities. For some young people, it might be that 5-minute blip. But what I try and do, so a few tips really, is
yes, please. Yeah, do.
Get off gadgets as predictable as possible. So create routines and rituals that give your children adequate warning so they get time to, because I think some of the challenges with gaming, for example, is they are in a game, they've got their kind of where they are in the league. And if you say it's dinner now, they cannot come out of that game without impacting their score. And that's one of the biggest arguments I always have with my sons. It's dinner now. Why are you in another game for 20 more minutes? So I'd say if you as a family can come together, it sounds like a really weird thing to do, but it was so effective. So having these conversations at the right time for everyone in your family is the best, rather than the time when your child is having a meltdown and you're like, that's it, from now on, you're never going on your screen before dinner, So if you can come around the table, get some pieces of paper. I've got some links I can give you at the end for families where they can link on to get some help with doing this. But basically, you can map out what do we think should be our family rules about digital time, because we all know, for all of us, including me as the parent, that the digital technology can get in the way of the stuff that's really important for us as individuals and a family. Then come up with some shared family rules about it. And when everybody's calm and happy, it's actually quite easy to come up with sensible rules. And if you as a parent commit to the rules as well, then actually you're much more likely to have a good outcome, because my kids love to remind me, you're telling me to get off my phone, but you're always on it. I'm like, yeah, but it's for work and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing a shop. But they're like, it doesn't matter. I'm doing all these different things and they're just as important to me. So there's something about how do we also build in a bit less digital time as adults, because the research does show that the more time you spend on your phone as a parent, the more time your child is likely to spend on a phone. There's a really strong link there.
I mean, I found that a really insightful conversation, didn't you, Angeline?
Yeah, that was amazing, actually. That I went on the same day, like hours later, and ordered the book. So I'm really looking forward to reading it. I mean, what she said about the dopamine crash, that was so insightful. Like, oh, yeah. And you can just see it in yourself, and the kids around you. And another thing that I was like, this big aha moment I've been telling everyone since she said it, it's about having a list of resources that you give the kids for mental health, to look up mental health topics, because, yeah, that's so important. But I mean, just something that you don't really think of. So I think that's really amazing, very, very valuable.
What did you get from that, Tara? I mean, I loved her idea of creating a family media plan, practical ways, realizing you've got the dopamine crash because you go, aha, that's what that is. Let's take 5 minutes. Because once you identify it, then you kind of know what to do with it. What did you get from that episode, Tara?
Yeah, I think that's it, absolutely. And it's something that's almost been a theme through a few of our episodes, this family approach. I nearly used the word attack. That was in response to that dopamine crash, because you are thinking, well, we need to challenge this. We need to think about how we can have those tools, how we can be equipped to deal with this. And that family media plan, we've repeated that sort of notion through the season. Let's get the family on the same page. It's never us versus them. It's not the adults versus the kids, it's with them. So let's make it a family conversation, engage in that tech talk. I mean, I've shared before about my son who's convinced he's the only one with sort of restrictions and limits. And it really is my strong belief that he'll thank me one day. I simply say, it's my job here as your parent. And it might not feel like it now, but it is how I show you love. This is how I keep you safe. So, and that was picked up, wasn't it? That reflection of a child looking back and saying, oh, I get it now, Mum. You were protecting me. It was how you were showing you love me.
Yeah, because Beth talked about her own son, who was 19 now, looking back and thanking her for protecting him when he was 15, and he was gaining a bit too much. And of course, hindsight is a wonderful skill. But I thought it was really real, because lots of the things she talked about were really rooted in her own first-hand experience as a single mum raising 3 kids, So another memorable episode was our chat with Dr. Amanda Gummer, and she is a play expert, and she talks about play being crucial for child development because, as we all know, it helps with cognitive skills, social interaction, emotional growth, and it's not just about fun, it's actually fundamental to learning.
Play is how children learn. It's what they learn. So it's the tool that they use to make sense of their world. They're learning how the world works. So they learn that, you've got something with wheels, you can push it along. It's how they copy what's going on around them. So they might have a toy kitchen and they're practicing, they're copying dad, mum, granny, whoever in the kitchen. It's how they learn. It's also how they learn about themselves. So it's what am I interested in? What makes me happy? What am I good at? All of those things come through play as well.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of types of play. I've got an infograph that shows you all the different types of play and different ages of what they're learning and what they're doing, and that kind of going along parallel play, and then that play when they snatch and they're learning from that, negotiation skills, leadership. It goes on and on.
It really does.
And that's why I'm so passionate about play, that people need to recognise and explore just allowing unstructured play as well. It's not all of that, let me guide it, let me interrupt, let me do it. It is actually just letting them play and letting them grow and letting them... So there's so much in there. I know you've written for Genius of Play. There's about 50 experts on there. Through their website, there's all sorts of things that you can find out. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. We're also going to put your websites, of course, into the show notes. Do you want to tell me what they are so people listening can remember?
Of course. So goodplayguide.com is the main website for reviews and advice and articles on playful family life, as well as quite a lot of stuff on additional needs and talking to kids about different issues and that kind of stuff. Fundamentallychildren.com is our research consultancy. So anybody who's interested in learning more about the kind of the business side of what we do and the research and how we approach that, is fundamentallychildren.com. And the other role I have for the last year or so now is the API, so chair of the Association of Play Industries, which is around outdoor play and playgrounds. So if you look on the API website, you can find out more about the benefits of letting kids go down to the local playground and what they can learn and how that all works. So yeah, they're the websites.
Love all of that. So what's your big takeaways? People listening to this, toddlers and tech and play and children slightly older and play right the way through our lives, because I think if you're more playful, you enjoy life a little more. We need to lighten up a bit. What would you say would be your top takeaways from listening to this today?
Let children play, absolutely prioritise play, and you don't have to be your kids' entertainer 24/7. Kids benefit from being able to play on their own.
So Amanda offered such insightful perspectives on the role of play in child development. What were your takeaways from that episode, Angeline?
I mean, I think it was really about thinking about our different starting points, right? Because what she said about the starting with play, the importance in the growth and development, and how difficult it can be in certain situations to even be able to do that. I often share about where I live, where there's still quite a bit of a culture to play outside and just run and jump and do all that kind of stuff.
And that's Italy, for those that don't know.
Exactly. It's southern Italy. Northern Italy is probably different. But, and it was difficult when I used to live in a city. I used to live in Prague. And after this episode, I just realized, unfortunately, even as difficult as it can be, depending on where you live, that's just an effort that parents will have to somehow put in. And I always say it seems like forever, but the time will pass so quickly anyway. So put that extra effort in.
Yeah, but the other thing with play, because there's so many different types of play, I've got an infograph about the 6 different types of play. Play doesn't have to be big deal with parents doing stuff. I mean, play is the antidote to smartphones in my book. Just go out and play. When I was growing up, I was constantly kind of out you go and play. And you just made it up as you went along. So it doesn't have to be structured play. As we said with Amanda, there are so many different types of play. But play is so important. And sometimes families, it doesn't have to be educational play. It doesn't have to be, with, cards and reading and all that stuff. Play is just all sorts of play. Playing with children of different ages, different stages, cousins, playing on your own, playing together, playing with parents. It's a whole mismatch. I mean, what did you think, Tara?
Well, you've just talked there about sort of play and the balance and almost the diet, which was what I took from it, actually. So it was really helpful, practical advice for parents about routines. And she had this very balanced approach. And she did start off by emphasising the difference between smartphone free and screen free, and kind of talked about what kids can handle, what they can't, and that emphasis on childhood and play. And acknowledgement that screens, not phones, but screens can be great for kids. There can be good quality TV programs, and that balance and that diet, that approach. I loved that anecdote that she used where she talked about, you want your kids to have most of the good stuff, and then they might have a little treat. And most of the good stuff is that outdoor play, that physical, that exploration, that creativity. And then, yes, there probably is a place for that little treat, which is, watching something on the sofa. Sure. So she came across, I felt, as a really supportive expert voice. I've got an anecdote I could share that was just this week. One of my friends knows that I work in this space, and she had another friend over. And when the friend arrived with their just over 1-year-old, she asked her to turn the child to watching Bluey.
Yeah,
Bluey's
of course,
great, by the way. Yeah, we love Bluey. But this parent came in and said, "Oh, do you mind turning the screen away? I don't want my child to have any exposure to a screen." And so my friend naturally felt a little bit of maybe shame or guilt or
judgment.
Should I? Yeah. And I just thought back to this episode and Dr. Amanda's really practical advice on, your judgment as a family about what those treats look like in a balanced diet and how they work for you, and being able to own that conversation. And, it should have been, my child's just watching a bit of Bluey. That's okay.
I think it's conscious use, isn't it? That's what we've been talking about all the way through the season. It's about balance, never banning anything, but it's conscious. It's not just automatically handing over a smartphone or a device when you're in a restaurant or when you're waiting at the dentist, or, it's not automatic. It's kind of conscious, because then it's fantastic and then it's limited. And then you talk and teach them about that. Eventually, what we're all trying to get to is self-regulation, so that we all end up working out how to balance our screen time. Because as you said back in some of the episodes, not all screen time is equal. You were talking about looking up a recipe, or, you were cooking, or whether it was you or a friend cooking and looking the recipe and naming what you're doing. So the kids don't think, oh, she's scrolling Instagram. You were actually, shopping list. What do you want for dinner next week? So that they can see that we're managing screen time in different ways. But it's all about conversations, isn't it, I think?
It is a conversation, and Dr. Amanda led that conversation, and we do it really well, don't we, when it comes to food with our kids? It's the summer, children are going to want ice creams. If they could have ice creams for breakfast, lunch and dinner,
they would.
They likely would. They likely would. And we've kind of got that in our parenting toolkit to talk about, healthy choices, and that could be your treat later. And I think if we almost took some of that great expertise we've developed as parents around food and diet and put that into a digital diet, just as a practical sort of metaphor, it would be a good place to start, wouldn't it? I can't let you have this all the time. It's not good for you. I can't let you have ice cream all the time. I know you'd choose it. And the kids generally would choose, she talked about sedentary activities or that sort of mindfulness versus just mindless scrolling. They're going to pick the easy activity. Of course they are. And it's our role to encourage them to have the good stuff. And we want more of that. It
does get a bit trickier, doesn't it, when they're teenagers?
Oh, it does.
I mean, that's when I think loads of people start. I mean, I'm writing a new book at the moment around scripts, around handling all this stuff. And it's the teenage years they wanted me to talk about, 12 until sort of 16, because you do have more control when they're younger, when they're 8 or when they're 5. And as they get into the 14, 15, 16, but that's when the conversations can change, and you don't come at it with a dictatorial kind of aggressive approach to it. Oh, take it from them. You've got to start having these intelligent conversations around balance and get them involved in it. I'm doing a screen test actually for a TV show. And she rang me up yesterday and asked me my approach to the teens, because this teen is on it 10 hours a day or something. And Mum is very nice, and I won't tell you who she is because she's quite famous, but she's not assertive. She's trying to be her kid's friend, not her parent. And that's where I came in. I said, do it together. Look at the apps, close down some of the notifications. That's a good place to start. I banged on about all the stuff we talk about in here, which is incrementally make some small changes, talk about it together, and Mum, you get involved in actually closing down your notifications and thinking about how you're using your smartphone too. So the kids, they're not children, are they? They're teens. They feel that it's a joint effort, and so they won't get quite so sort of resentful of it, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I think actually I'm one of those parents that walk into places and ask people not to give the phones. And so I can really understand what this story that you said, Tara. And I think it's important really to prepare. I do it because I know my daughter's not prepared for certain things like YouTube, and I don't want her to have free reign on YouTube.
She's 8, isn't she?
She's 8.
Yeah.
But I've found also at that age, I mean, having the conversations, we just mentioned the teens, it's important to have the conversations. They're very understanding of it, and they're at an age where they kind of trust you more because they don't know better.
They don't know you know it. You don't know much more than they do.
and so you can actually show them, look at the people around them, the negative impact of too much screen, and they will be more, they'll kind of accept it more. And I've found that's a very powerful way as well, to go, like, as you say, really make them a partner. And it's really great. She also, when she asked me, what are you doing on your phone? And she wants to know, because we had that also, I don't remember which episode, that, tell your children if you're on the screen what you're doing, so they understand it. And so then you're not just scrolling through some social media. And I think that's important, as you say, create a partnership. We're in this together. So many adults, I mean, I've read over 50% of adults in the United States show signs of phone addiction. I know that's not always the right word to use, but they show signs. So probably adults are having the same problem as kids.
Of course.
So if we admit that, we can do it together, like with your initiative, the screen-free challenge that you're doing this summer, Sue.
Yeah, it's trying to balance it, and it's trying to keep those conversations going quite regularly, but without that tone of voice that sounds judgmental and angry. It just gets everybody tense. It is about trying to do it to get everyone's navigating the digital jungle in their own way. So that's why the podcast is here, to give you a few ideas, try a few things out, as we call them, changes, not challenges, because that always sounds a bit hard work. One small change, like, charge the phone downstairs and don't bring it into the bedroom. Makes such a difference. So it's small changes that make big differences. So that leads me on to the lovely Lucy Smith, who featured in episode 2, I think it was. We had a very memorable episode with Lucy where we discussed digital well-being for families. And let's hear a clip from that conversation.
She got to the age of 14, and little did I know, but she was investigating how she could give up her mobile phone and what to do about this. Because she started to say, I think it's fueling my depression. I think it's fueling me. I think it's part of it. It's just, I'm just there. I'm scrolling and I'm looking at meaningless videos, short form content. I don't want to be on it anymore. By this time, she'd already stopped her YouTube channel. She'd already stopped all of those kind of things. And so she gave up her phone at 15. So she gave up her smartphone, and she was connected. She was out there. At 15, she said, take it away. I don't want it. I didn't ask her to. Dad didn't ask her to. She wanted to give it up. And what she'd done is that she'd started to investigate something called digital minimalism. I don't know if you've heard that phrase, digital minimalism. Yeah. And there's a book by an academic called, I think I'm going to get it the right way around, Cal Newport. Okay. So he's over in the States. Yes. And she'd read it And she said, Mum, I want you to read this book. I mean, this is like, she was 14 at the time when she's reading these academic books. And we started to talk about it. And she said, I want to give up my phone. So she did. Okay. She talks about it. And we've done a podcast episode with her talking about her experiences and how she did it. And she didn't go cold turkey. She kind of just weaned herself down a little bit. She worked out what her screen time she was using. But she'd got to this point where she'd said, why am I living other people's lives through this screen when I should be living my own life? And I think that's really impactful. And so she's nearly 18 now, and she gave up her phone. She did get a phone last year, so she got another smartphone. She got herself a brick, right? Her burner phone, okay? So she has a burner phone. But she said, I'm going to get a smartphone again, Mum, because I think I need it for things like getting on a bus, using a QR code, accessing payments in a shop without a bank card. And so she did. And then within about 4 months, she said to her brother, do you want to buy my phone? Because I don't want it anymore. I'm going to stick with my Nokia brick. And so she just has a dumb phone, a burner phone now. But here's the interesting thing. Her brother had her phone. Guess what her brother did 2 weeks ago? Take my phone away, Mum. I don't want it anymore. I'm quitting my phone. Can we go and get me a burner phone? So we have. He now has that. He has no clue how to use it, so he very rarely takes it anywhere. He's 16, right? He's 16. All his mates think he's a bit weird. He's not. He's actually really sensible to all his friends. And his friends are really good friends, so they say it in jest. But he now doesn't have a smartphone either. And his reasoning was, I'm spending time online scrolling through rubbish, and I want that time back in my life. I don't want to wake up in the morning and, as you were saying, Tara, I don't want to go to that pick up and scroll straight away to the YouTube short form. Like he was watching YouTube short videos, and he said, I just spent 2 hours mindlessly scrolling. It means nothing. I want to go and do something else with my life.
So Lucy gave us so many actionable tips, and it was all done from personal experience. She works in that space too now, but she has an autistic daughter and the impact of the smartphone on her. What did you find most memorable, Angeline, from our chat with Lucy?
From the chat with Lucy, this is by far how blown away I was at her children, at her kids, and how well they knew themselves at such a young age. I mean, a lot of people, me included, do double their age still trying to figure out to know yourself, and they just so much awareness. I always talk about awareness matters. I say that a lot. And you can really see with her kids, like awareness mattered. They could feel how it was negatively influencing them. And they asked their mother for help to get away from it. And it was just so, so powerful. And also a sign that we shouldn't underestimate our kids' ability to help themselves if they have the awareness that they might need to. So yeah, that was by far the thing that I found the most striking in the discussion with Lucy.
What did you think, Tara? What did you take away from Lucy's conversation?
Well, Angeline, you just mentioned awareness, and it was in this conversation that we uncovered pickups.
Ah, yes. Wonderful.
Do you remember
yes.
we discussed
Absolutely.
this? And being aware of how often you reach for your phone, and that within screen time you can track how often you're actually picking up the phone. And that serves as a really good tool to open conversations with teens, as you mentioned earlier there, Sue, to think, well, how often are you picking up your phone? And then you can also see what's the first thing you do every time you pick it up. So you can, go a layer deeper. And it was a bit of a revelation for us all. We were kind of nervously thinking, how often do I pick up my phone? What am I up to? And Lucy kind of said, she was like, I know I need to improve on that. So the attention to, as adults, what we're doing on our phones, why we're doing it, if we do have any compulsions, bad habits that we've fallen into, if we can then perhaps talk about those with our children, the people in our families, and what work we can do to reduce that and to be there. And it certainly was the compulsion, I think, that her children realised, I'm picking up my phone, I don't even know why I'm doing it. Or sort of, I'm using my phone excessively and I'm not getting what I need from it. I mean, using our phones doesn't really fill our cups up, does it?
No, but it's that boredom thing, isn't it? Split second. I was in the hairdressers earlier and I was waiting. And I thought, I'm going to make myself not pick up my phone because it's only 5 minutes. I've got to look out the window and do all that stuff. And then I found myself wanting to just check to see what time we were meeting or what we were doing. And I thought, gosh, it's that split second of we're never really bored. And when I was growing up, because we didn't have all this tech, there were loads of periods where I was bored, but it also made me more creative. So it's even being aware of our screen and what we're doing. Like you say, that pick-up thing was amazing because it just makes you think, I'm picking it up again. Why? Because it's only picked up a few minutes ago. Yeah. Awareness.
And there's statistics, aren't there, Sue? I don't have them to hand, about sort of the phantom vibrations and people being convinced that their phones are notifying them. And that goes into another conversation about, is it the human reaction to the phone? Is it our phones distracting us, or is it our human reaction? Because my phone's the other side of the desk now because I'm having this lovely conversation with you. But if I had notifications or, turned up the other way, no doubt in the past 15 minutes it would have pinged, blinged, and then it would have been my human reaction to go to that. So we always have to train ourselves to know that they're going to keep pinging, they're going to keep having alerts, telling me about wonderful things and not so wonderful things that are happening. But what can I do before I reach for the phone?
Yeah, and that's why the idea of notifications or turning them off, talking with your kids about, because I do that. I've turned most of my notifications off, just my WhatsApp, because of my kids. Sometimes we banter about stuff. But it is that kind of Pavlov's dog, isn't it? It goes, you check, you go again. And so I've got a powerful poster that I send on social media, and it says, the technology that connects us also controls us. And I think that's it. It's about getting back some control. Once you think of it like that, think, gosh, yes, I'm just being led by the nose down this sort of way with all the stuff I'm doing. I think I need to just come back into balance and sort of think about what I'm doing and how often I'm doing it. So that leads us on to this fantastic book that everyone was talking about and still is talking about, clip from our episode 1 about smartphones. I was listening to Jeremy Vine and a woman rang in and her son was year 6 and they started a WhatsApp group for the year 6s and he was sort of all part of it and it was all exciting and all the rest of it. Within 3 hours, he'd had 400 messages and he was almost in tears. They weren't horrible ones. They weren't cyberbullying or anything, but they were overwhelming him with notifications. And, because mum was interested and said to him and chatted with him, conversations are so important for connection. She said, would you like me to take you out of the group and you can blame me? And he just visually just went, yes, please. Because he couldn't cope with all the notifications. And that's not even nasty things. So it's hard. I mean, how do you do it even with your 3-year-old then? Because, they're all growing up with all this tech.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
And growing up around other devices and seeing older brothers and then thinking, why can't I? Why can't I do that? Yeah. I would bring it back to, you've mentioned Jonathan Haidt earlier in this in this conversation. And I really think one of his statements about experience blockers is key.
Yes.
He says your phone is an experience blocker. You will spend less time in the presence of people. You're not with friends. You're sleeping less. You're in nature. You're reading fewer books. You don't have time for anything else. Navigating with children is difficult, and screens can sometimes be a go-to when you need that breather.
Yeah.
But the minute it starts to become an experience blocker and you're not taking your children outside and you're not reading books and you're not playing and you're not doing those things, that's when you take a pause, I think, for a sense check. And to that point, I have a friend with a child of a few years older, he's 5, and I'm sure she won't mind me sharing this. Lots of conversations. She wanted to limit tablet time. It wasn't a phone, but had a tablet. So she tried a strategy of it being in the car, long journeys.
Yeah.
But he then picked up an association that his tablet was linked to the car.
Yes.
And when they were out places,
he wanted
it. Didn't realise it at first. Wanted to get back in the car.
Oh my God, yeah.
So talk about an experience blocker. He's out having a play date or he's gone somewhere and the pull of the devices as you mentioned, Angeline, the pull of the devices, the persuasive technologies is such that these very young developing brains, that was fun. You know, they're fun. They're great.
Yeah.
They're addictive.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was fun. I want to get back in the car so I can have my tablet time.
It's a big topic in the news around the world since Jonathan Haidt's new book launched called The Anxious Generation, where social psychologist Jonathan Haidt lays out the facts around the endemic of teenage mental illness that hit many countries at the same time since 2010. So, Tara, what was your top takeaway experience around that? Was it experience blockers, or what did you get from reading his book?
Yeah, I have quoted experience blockers, you know, many times. Let's think about you sat in the hairdresser, Sue, as an experience blocker. You could potentially have had a lovely conversation with the person next to you, found some common interest. You know, that's how people meet and chat in your local community. But most of the time we're blocking ourselves from that experience because we've got our face down in screens. So I had to take my son for his pass renewal emergency appointment. Let's not add to the guilt here. But yes, I realised a little late his passport had expired. So it was a decent wait in those experiences. And we sat in the room and looked round. 18, 19, 20 people all had their faces down in screens. And I said, you know, this room would have been full of noise and people chatting and small talk. So it is that blocker to experiences. It's if you're on your phone, it's preventing you from reaching out to those close to you, spending less time outdoors, less time playing, less time talking. So whilst that was my one takeaway, I found this book really interesting. There are 4 sort of rules. I don't know if he calls them rules, Jonathan, but I think so, which this is a #1 New York bestseller now. It's one of the most successful books, certainly of this past year. I love that it's being talked about, being brought up at dinner parties. Let's keep this conversation going. But within those 4 rules, no smartphones before high school, no social media before 16, and phone-free schools.
And play, doesn't he? He talks about,
well, that's the sneaky one. So you
couldn't wait
will
to
have
jump
the 4th
in there.
one.
Sorry.
No, and that's fine because it's your area of interest and expertise, as it is mine. But the 4th one is getting the least exposure. And my takeaway for me, I think it's the most important, which is more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. That for me is the standout moment of the book, is how can we encourage this independence, this free play and responsibility? Because we're human childhood has always been about play, with our backgrounds in education and child psychology. That's how we wire up our brains. We have got to let our children play with older children, younger children, navigate, independent, self-supervised. To quote Jonathan, it's nature's social, emotional learning. So the reason I want to see more of that, yes, we're on the no phone bans for no social media behind all of that. And it feels like there's such movement with with this removal of phones from schools. They don't need to be out in a school day, do they? But what are we going to do to create this place for our young people to hang out, to play out? Because it's a different world. I don't think we are just saying off you go play in the street. So that fourth rule from the book, that's why I think we need to see a societal shift. Or, Angeline, we could all move to the south of Italy. But
Exactly.
But they talk...
if that's not an option, what are we going to do? How are we going to get our kids out?
I know. I still remember on the weekends. I mean, it's been 2 years since I moved away from Prague. It was a real challenge finding something for my daughter to do outside. If you didn't want to spend a bunch of money, obviously there's always paid possibilities. It's very difficult, I have to say. And I really feel for parents who are in a situation where it's just even not safe in a lot of places. It's not safe to, as you say, send them outside and, go play in the playground. It's so important. And, that when I was preparing for the episode, I was reading a lot of research about the impacts of smartphones on mental well-being. And obviously the first thing that struck me was the conflicting research. The first thing I found, I think, was nice headline at the top. I think it was from Oxford or something, that I could never say anything against Oxford, that there was some proof that phones aren't damaging for kids. And as I was reading all this research And I was like, okay, but I'm a mother. I am with a lot of other mothers and fathers, and I see the damage. And we also talked about even a few times is that you don't necessarily have research to tell you that something is not necessarily good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the before and after.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting because I hadn't been focused on that very much. I always say my focus is like in online security and privacy. And I just love the whole episode, just listening to you, Sue and Tara, that opened this new world to me that obviously was not new. I mean, this is a big problem, but to hear your expert experience on it, on the tips, it was a really great episode. And I think something you can just look around and see parents are dealing with, especially in the summer.
Yeah, because
anytime there's a break.
It's like that smartphone-free childhood activity that's just gone through the roof. And Jonathan recommends them, and you can join that grassroots activity because parents kind of know. We can see the difference. Yes, there's research out there. Yes, it's a bit conflicted, but you kind of know that being on your smartphone for 10 hours a day if you're a teenager isn't the best thing to be doing. And Jonathan went across I write on Substack, and he also writes on there, so I read his stuff. And he talks about letting go and letting grow. And yes, play is important, but independence is important. This idea, it's a dangerous world, you can't walk to school or, ride on a bus to school. We've got to try and get away from this sort of helicopter parenting, keep it balanced, incrementally give them independence. It's even down to struggling to pull up a zip or pull on your wellies when you're little, because that develops your resilience muscles, and then allow them to do certain things as they mature. You know your child better than anyone else. It's not an age thing, actually. It's a maturity thing, and allow them to grow and let go of them a little bit because we're smothering them.
Yeah. Well, and that probably is a standout quote that people will see regularly used from this book, is that we have overprotected them in the real world. And to your point, your expertise in AI and online safety, Angeline, but we're underprotecting them online. And people are fearing the demons at the park. They're not at the park. They're in the phones.
Yeah.
So actually, the safer children are playing out at the park than in their bedrooms. There was a great young person who came forward and said, my mum was making sure I was having 5 a day and sneaking me bowls of fruit into my bedroom, trying to keep me safe, but actually what I was exposed to online.
Wow, was far worse. Yeah. So we've got to try and get that balance. And this is what this whole podcast is around, giving you some solutions, giving you some ideas or some takeaways or thought-provoking moments so you just pause to ponder and think about it. I think what worries me most is that we hand our children smartphones too early. And I think we steal their boredom from them. As a result, we're raising a generation of writers who will never start writing, artists who will never start doodling, cooks who will never start making a mess in the kitchen, kids who never stare out of the window and dream. Remember that? Or it was just that me at school. Or kids who don't know how to play by themselves or make small talk with people. One thing I'm pretty good at, I notice, is what my daughter says, talking rubbish half the time to strangers. But it is actually a gift because it connects me to people. Like you say, in the hairdressers, usually I'll talk to someone on a train or I'll talk to someone at a bus stop because I'm just chatty like that. And I know I'm half Irish, but that's not just it.
Sue, it's a skill, isn't it? It's a life skill.
Yeah.
And I'm back to the passport office with my son. It was his appointment.
Yes.
He's 11. So he kind of looked up at me and naturally thought I was going to walk up to the desk, like in a butcher's when you get your little number. It was like, appointment, go to this kiosk. And I said, it's your appointment, up you get.
Yes.
You go ahead of me, say good morning, sit down. Because so many of our young people will be terrified to speak to an adult. So again, we must provide the opportunities. We must encourage our children.
Because I even noticed that with my daughter, who's grown up. She's coming up to 30, actually. And when she was doing jobs and she was applying for jobs, she's now got a great job and it was all great in the end. But she wouldn't chase anybody on the phone. She wouldn't mind chasing things, on an email or a WhatsApp. But she wouldn't want to talk to anybody about something that wasn't quite right with the gas or with the job. She wanted to know an update. So there is that hesitancy. And I think helping kids like that, with that example, making small talk with people is really good, because we need kids to be fully present in the real world. Because online, off they go and say all sorts of things and do all sorts of things. And there is a place for that. But actually think about how you can empower your kids to talk to people and just be friendly.
I challenge those parents of teenagers, as we're talking about, they will be so efficient at ordering on Just Eat. They will know exactly how to get a delivery to their door in seconds. Instead, here's a challenge or a change you could try. Can they call up a local takeaway and make an order and speak to somebody on the phone? You'd be surprised how terrified they'll be. They'll be like, absolutely not, Mo, hard pass, not doing it. And that could be, well, if you want me to pay for your burger this evening, you've got to call up and order it. See what happens. They'll go hungry, probably.
Interesting. So there's a little change that you can plan away and have fun with. This leads me on to our memorable episode and our chat with Monetta Viegas, who explored the power of well-being and relaxing. Now, I've known Nettie for many, many years, and Relax Kids supports children's mental and emotional health with a whole range of tools and techniques to help with self-regulation, calming their bodies and minds, helping them drift off to sleep with her most magical meditations, some of them. Here's a highlight from her episode.
When I started in 1999, there wasn't a mental health crisis, but I saw something in the change in children. I'd been an entertainer since the early 90s, and over that time, I noticed their inability to sit still and listen to my show. And I thought, well, my show's not getting worse. Their minds, their brains, something's happening. And having practiced meditation since I was 12, I felt meditation was the answer. But I had to find a way to make meditation accessible to children and acceptable to adults, because having grown up in the 70s, 80s doing meditation, I was called a hippie, lentil eating, all that sort of thing. It did have a stigma. It doesn't now, but it did then. So I took all the fairy stories and I turned them into meditations, and I really sort of got into children's minds, and it sort of took off from there. It really was just 2 books, and then I made some CDs, and then it built from there. And alongside that, I developed a set of classes, which is 7 steps, which works through their natural energy system. Because if you tell children who are scaling the walls, right, everybody lie down, they just can't do it. You have to work through their body, their heart, and then to do something for teens. So it really helps them understand how their minds work, how their bodies work, how their brains work. And they need to switch off, just like a computer, just like their phone. They need to reboot. They need to recharge. And so that it sort of developed from there. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. And it really has. I mean, you mentioned it briefly there, but have you noticed even more since the pandemic, a change in children's well-being in recent years?
It's off the scale. It's unbelievable. The need, and so many of my coaches are just saying, we need more coaches, because there's such a massive need in schools, in homes, in community centres, wherever there are so many issues, unfortunately, children are having. But for me, it's about simplicity.
Yes.
We have so many theories out there. And an interesting thing, when I first created Relax Kids, I didn't know any theory. I come from a performing arts background, music, drama, dance degree, and I used all those exercises to create these Relax Kids with the meditation. But I wasn't aware of any theory when I created it. It's just practical. These things help children. These things help young people. They feel better after they have done it. And then, of course, now, every single one of my 7 steps, there has been so much research by other people, because they're basic human things that we all need: moving, stretching, breathing, affirmations, meditation. Yeah. But the key is simplicity. We overcomplicate with theory, I personally feel.
I absolutely agree. I call it KISS. You got to keep it simple, I think, really. And that doesn't mean it's not well-founded in research or it's got complicated aspects to it, but to keep it simple makes it accessible to everybody. I mean, I see your work really as an antidote, in a sense, to screens. to help children find balance. So what do the Relax Kids classes improve? Can you tell us about that?
Well, of course, it helps concentration, focus, builds their self-esteem, helps them improve their sleep. We've had some amazing surprises. They weren't created for children with neurodivergence, but I remember going into a school. This is early 2000s. I went into a school and it was a mixed group, and there was a child there with autism. Well, the person looking after him said he really won't get this, but we'll let him stay for a bit. That child, her jaw was on the floor. He was just totally there, and he got it, and he relaxed. I've had children with ADHD literally bouncing off the walls, and after the 45 minutes, asleep. And people are just like, I cannot believe this, because they're exhausted. Their brains need to relax. They're just exhausted, and they're just like little wound screws. But we have to move through their body first before we get them relaxing. That's really key.
So Nettie's passion for mindfulness, for relaxing, was really infectious. And she said she's seen a real shift and drop in children's mental health and well-being across all the ages. And she also talks about, sparking imaginations. She's really, really fantastic in this arena. Angeline, what were your techniques did you find, or what did you take away from talking to Nettie?
Again, this was a really excellent episode, and I don't even know that I mentioned that, but I studied dance, originally. I was a dancer.
I didn't know that.
And it really, what she was talking about, I could really see where she took it from. And I remembered, wow, I'm not doing any of this stuff anymore, and I'm not giving it to my daughter. And that's what I've really done since then, is really take moments to relax, talk things through, help her to do that. It really does make a huge difference. I mean, just taking a back, sitting down, slowing down, understand what's happening inside. And it's just been an amazing, relatively simple, actually. It's not that
most things
difficult,
that
but
work hard, they kiss. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. You have to be able to slow down, and that's what's the hardest part to take. Find a moment to slow down. But, that link between the body and the mind, and then going back to all this talk about phones and screen time, it takes you away from that. This was something that I really appreciated about that episode. Just a reminder, there weren't phones back then, something like 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. No, 30. There weren't phones, so you couldn't get distracted. You were fully in the moment because there was nothing that you could possibly distract you. And it's really hard to be fully in the moment now.
It is.
You both said a few times, because you have to intentionally get things away. And even my daughter at the beginning, I started putting my phone places where I wasn't. She's like, you forgot your phone. No, I didn't. I left it there on purpose.
Yes.
We're almost having to be intentionally bored.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great expression.
Isn't that odd to reflect on our own childhoods? I can really think about long car journeys, and I can still picture myself as just staring out the window.
Counting post boxes we used to do. Do you remember that?
Just gazing. And they talk about, I'm saying they, but child psychology, we often talk about the best thing we can do for our children is to let them be bored. And said, now is it our responsibility to schedule boredom?
Interesting. That's a real food for thought, actually, isn't it? What was your takeaway from Nettie's episode, Tara?
Oh, well, it was that emphasis on letting children create their own way of using the skills. And that was inspiring, the whole brain holistic approach, but it's fun, magical, creative, to let the children feel happier and healthier. Yeah, I think that's one I would definitely recommend. Take a moment, schedule some time for it and have a listen.
Yeah, lovely. And lastly, we have the pleasure of speaking with Bill Schmarzo from the impact of AI technology on education and AI generally. Now, what an enthusiastic, lovely man Bill is. And he's so generous with his time, generous with his sharing of information, particularly on LinkedIn. He is just a top man. And here's a snippet from Bill. What are they persuading you to do? Because if you just even think of that, suddenly you're in a critical thinking sort of mindset.
What you've done by saying that is you've taken control of the narrative. That's it. Instead of somebody telling you and directing you a certain way, we are putting parents and putting children in control of their own destiny, right? We're empowering them. We don't want victims. We have too many people in this world who are playing the victim card. No, not acceptable, especially with AI, because AI will run over us, right? AI, even after you've trained it, will make decisions millions of times faster than we as humans can make, right? So we have to be vigilant and make certain that we are taking control by ensuring that as we build out these AI models and the AI utility function, which is the beating heart of these things, that everybody understands their roles, their responsibilities, and their expectations. What's your role? Your role is to make certain that your voice is heard in the variables and metrics around which that model is being trained. You have a role to play. You have a right to make certain that you're inclusive of others. If this person's voice isn't being heard for whatever reason, you need to make sure that their voice is heard, because as humans, we are stronger through diversity and we innovate through conflict. So bring those in. And then the expectation, right? The expectation is that you have a right to expect that anytime something is shown to you or a decision is made, the expectation to understand, why was that decision made about me, and what were the variables and metrics and the associated weights that made that decision? So if I was declined a loan, or was it admitted to a university somewhere, I have a right and a responsibility and an expectation to know why that happened.
Yeah, I think, that's important. If I can, because I'm not sure how many parents who are listening are aware how many decisions, especially in the critical phases of their children's development, are actually made by AI in the meantime. I know obviously there's great work about the AI hiring bias from Haidt Schmartzo.
Yeah.
You also talk about that a lot in your work. A lot of decisions where minorities are just being kind of left out because the AI just doesn't know about them, right? That awareness is so important.
Yeah, and it's also in images as well. If you just put in, an image, it will come out sort of not diverse enough. It'll be a sort of a blonde, white, young woman. And so all of these things we've really got to sort of think about.
So this is the power of AI. Now, traditional machine learning models, they make predictions based on what the historical data has told them. And so by definition, you're going to make decisions that reflect the biases of the past. And there's all kinds of threats. There's confirmation bias. There's unintended consequences.
So Bill offered such valuable insights into integrating technology into education. He talked about AI. This was a poster I had to make, and I printed it off, and it's going around my social media. It's one you can get and stick on your wall, if nothing else, or certainly a thing to get your kids thinking about. What are they persuading me to do? Because that was such a powerful takeaway for me. Because everything you're doing online, really, you're getting influenced all the time and you don't even realize you are. So his takeaway there for me was fantastic. Angeline, you know Bill very well. What did you take away from that episode?
Well, as you said, Bill was the original inspiration for Data Girl. So I know him very well. And what struck me, and I speak to him often, but what really struck me from this conversation was his optimism, because I'm a little bit obsessed with unintended consequences. I'm just obsessed with seeing what's happening with technology, especially with AI, and seeing what are we not seeing, as exactly as you mentioned, persuading, because it's literally everywhere. And kids and youth, they really need to be aware of this. And I can kind of get stuck. I also have somehow a CFO mind, because I was a CFO for a long time. So I'm focused on the risks. And Bill comes in and reminded me, you need to be optimistic, because AI can be used for good. And there also needs to be that balance to certain things in AI you won't be able to change. The society is going in a certain direction, And I believe we will be able to change a lot, but certain things, certain bad players, you won't be able to change, no matter how much good we do, with podcasts like this or with other organizations.
Or even in medicine, isn't it? AI is just fantastic.
Yeah.
Or eco-friendly opportunities, people creating and using AI to good effect. But like everything, there's good players and bad players in it too. And we've got to, I think, ladies, we all agree on this. The takeaway, if nothing else from all the episodes, is communication with our kids and critical thinking. You've got to get kids thinking about what they're doing. And that's what Bill was sort of talking about, isn't it?
Yeah. So I work in this space in education and in EdTech, and I found Bill's perspective really super interesting. And of course, it starts with awareness. So some of the things, awareness, taking control of the narrative and empowering our kids. So Angeline, you just said there, you're naturally wired to be like, what are we not seeing? And my, from an educator's perspective, is what are we not doing? What are we not doing yet? And I think what we're not doing is educating our younger people. I think that AI is there from such a young age, and it's in their everyday life. And there's no opportunity within the curriculum to sort of bury our head in the sands or push it further into older children. Bill talked about the importance of critical thinking, but our young children aren't wired that way, not the same way we are. I think, what did he say? Something funny. They'll reach out to the angry dog and pet it. They'll see a puppy. It takes somebody in the room to bring that awareness and that critical thinking. So it does start with teaching, education, learning, discussing. And we know our parents want to be doing this, but, and I do some work in this space, AI is complicated. AI is complex. And you do such a fantastic job of tackling this and taking it on to Data Girl, because the very complicated stuff, it becomes accessible to parents and to young people. So yeah, my takeaway was, what are we not doing and what can we do? And the answer, as always, is usually educating ourselves, our children, through conversation.
I just connected with someone on LinkedIn, actually. I do quite a lot on LinkedIn now that I used to, but a guy liked some of the things, because I write nearly every day. I have this compulsion to write about this topic and stuff. And he is in early years, and he's talking about education in nurseries around these topics, of course, age appropriate. But, we're very mindful at the moment, and whenever you listen to this, it doesn't really matter, but bots, echo chambers, AI, hate crime is a big problem. So digital literacy, one of the answers to the jigsaw, because it's complicated, and I've written a lot of stuff. I'm in the Metro actually yesterday writing about how to talk to your children about the murders of the 3 children. And then I take it on and I keep on talking about scripts of what to say and how to say. So it's in the Metro with that. But for me, all of these things is we need to talk and teach them. And education and digital literacy feeds into all the complex stuff that the politicians have to do and all the big tech. And Elon Musk does not help when he puts out unhelpful stuff. So we have to take responsibility to talking and teaching children of all ages, from education, from schools, from parents to grandparents to big tech. We're all in it together. We're all part of the jigsaw. There is no easy, simple way to do anything. Like anything in life, life is complicated, but at least if you do 1 or 2 things, you're making a difference to that one, like the starfish story. So I hope people take away some good stuff from what even Bill was talking about and what we've talked about throughout the whole of the series.
Yeah, I think one thing, I really want to add at this point, because I think it's so important, that parents shouldn't be afraid of not knowing. You can teach your kids about AI at exactly the same time you learned about AI. Especially with AI, I want to mention that because they probably are more aware if they have devices already and they have friends who have devices. They are likely more aware of what's going on than you are. And that's okay. It's okay. I really always say to parents, don't wait until you know. Start the conversation, learn together, critical thinking together, ask questions together, just with AI, because if we wait to get some kind of information, then things are going so fast. As you say, what are we doing, Tara? That was really perfect. Like, what are we doing? And what? Definitely don't wait, just do.
So tell us, Angeline, what are you working on at the moment? Because I know you've got some new characters, haven't you?
I do. I have my new characters. I've been working on different formats. I've just been playing with the different formats of my videos. So for the younger ones, I have these little animals. They each have like a digital personality. And we're going to do the lessons kind of more through stories. So that's what I'm doing right now, kind of playing with different formats. A lot of fun.
Where can people find you when they're listening to this immediately?
Other than LinkedIn, which I'm on quite a bit, but I know not everyone's on LinkedIn. So datagirlandfriends.com with slashes between all the words. That's the best place to find me and my work.
Wonderful. And Tara, what are you working on at the moment?
You can find any information about my work in schools at FOMO-Tech, but that's with a PH, like phone, FOMO-Tech. And I'm working with schools on resourcing, on solutions, thinking about most of what we've talked about today, sort of conscious, controlled, happy and healthier phone use or screen use, and continuing this conversation. One thing I should throw in is we're getting great feedback from parents and parents of children of varied ages. It's not just our older teenage parents that are looking for help in this space. So we're here to help. Listeners can reach out to us all, can't they, Sue?
They certainly can. And I'm very excited to talk about our exciting giveaway. We're giving away a copy of Dr Beth Mosley's Happy Families, How to Protect and Support Your Child's Mental Health. Now, it really is a must-have family handbook. It's accessible, it's game-changing, and it's with wonderful tips for family life. So to enter the giveaway, simply follow and like our podcast on your favourite platform, share this bonus episode on your social media, and tag us with the hashtag Digital Jungle Giveaway. And you can follow us on social media with Nav Jungle Pod, which is on Twitter. And you can find us by going to navigatingthedigitalJungle.com, and you can find all the social media there. But we'll announce the lucky winner in our next episode. So good luck to everyone. It's an amazing prize. And I look forward to hearing from everybody who's simply following and liking our podcast and sharing it with their friends and family who are interested in that, balance between tech and family life. So, yeah, Angeline, what do you think of the amazing prize?
I think it's an amazing prize. As I said, I bought the book immediately. So it's just so valuable. And it was very kind of her to give us that opportunity.
Really great. And Tara?
Yeah, I'm excited to see who wins, and it's a great opportunity for our listeners.
Navigating the Digital Jungle with Sue Atkins and Friends.
And with that, we wrap up our special bonus episode. Thank you all for joining us and for being part of our podcast community. We've had a fantastic journey through season 1, and we're looking forward to bringing you more in season 2. So come and explore Navigating the Digital Jungle website with bonus content. Got loads of helpful links and lots of ideas and suggestions. It's bursting with practical advice that you can use straight away, and tell us how you're getting on at info@navigatingthedigitaljungle.com. So it's time to say goodbye. We're also doing Screen-Free Summer Change. Get involved in that on Facebook. Tell friends if you're looking for some ideas about how to kind of balance that smartphone tech thing with the kids in the summer holidays. We've got some very practical and some very simple changes that you can make that will really help. So don't forget, enter the giveaway, follow and like our podcast, share this bonus episode on your social media, tag us and use the hashtag Digital Jungle Bonus. Until next time, take care, stay safe, have fun and enjoy the journey.
A jungle out there.